Welcome back to Albert Park, and this category is called the Australian GT Championship, and I've got to say I'm very glad that Craig Begg joins me for this one. And Craig drove in this race here last year and spent some time in the category. It gets a little confusing, Beto, at times when there's three in the one, but there's the grid, and pretty impressive for Kandouris.
Oh, good to see Theo Kandouris qualified on pole. That's the first pole position for him. Normally his brother takes a bit of limelight, but look, Peter Hackett back in the Lamborghini in fifth position. Tony Quinn back in his VIP. He's in the Aston Martin. He crashed his Mosler at Adelaide.
Good to see John Bowers in for this, and he's really had no time in that car at all.
No, first time in the Ascari for John Bow. Mark Seni, local businessman from Melbourne here. Hector Lester, all the way from Ireland, back into his 430 Ferrari.
It must be tough looking through this grid here. Such a variety of cars that are in here, different categories as far as production, championship cars. It's a big mix.
Yeah, there's a huge mix. You can see Ash Samadhi there. He's back in 24th, but like he's in a championship car, so he would have liked to have been a little bit further up the grid. Paul Tressiter back from doing Asian Carrera Cup. You know, we've got plenty of guys, plenty of cars. Paul Freestone, huge amount of mileage behind that guy. Ross Zampatti back in 31st, another Lamborghini. Plenty of Lamborghinis out there. Tony Alford, Donut King, Nissan GTR.
Lamborghinis are like Holdens in this class.
Mate, there's plenty of them, but they are actually limited to only 5, but all the Lamborghinis are, there's only 5 per mark. The class has been so successful after, you know, the last 2 or 3 years that they've had to limit the number of marks per, you know, they don't want 20 Lamborghinis out there. There's 5 Lamborghinis, there'll be 5 Porsches, and it's a bit like musical chairs.
The Ascari is a car that's well known overseas. It's very, very strong and competitive. We're not sure about the car that John Bowers in today. You've had a bit of a hunt around. What have you found out?
Had a bit of a look around. He's brand new to it. He said even he was a little bit nervous jumping into it, not having driven it. He doesn't know a lot about it. It's got a V8 BMW engine. You can see them now forming up for the start. These cars have a rolling start. There's so many different gearbox variations and clutch systems that it's just a much safer option for GT cars to have a rolling start. This is where something like the Mosler or the Lamborghini will have a little bit of advantage over the lower horsepower Porsches. But coming up for a start now, Max Twiggs actually probably in the better position. Poles on the inside, good start there.
Oh,
that's James Kandouris, jumped out from 3rd on the grid, passing his brother. David Wall up the inside. He's the current points leader for the championship. He said to me before this race he just wanted to get through turn 1, let it sit. There's major pile up back there.
It's so easy to happen here at Albert Park too. They all get bottled up into turn 1.
Max Twigg out front, he'll be wrapped there. He was started off grid number 2, but as I said, grid number 2 here is a big advantage because it is on the inside. The Formula 1 guys tend to want the pole position to be on the outside, which is a little bit strange sometimes. I think we're going to see a safety car. I can see a light flashing.
This is round 2 of the championship for this category, but interesting that the Aston Martin...
Sounds like they've definitely deployed a safety car. They're going to have to clean this up. One of the problems you have with some of these GT cars, the Porsche especially, has a lot of radiator oil coolers right up the front, and you can see now the problem. That car's been parked there. It's got a huge amount of oil and water sitting right in the middle of turn 1. It's actually something that the Formula 1 guys, they dread looking at support categories and looking at the track getting covered in water, oil. You know, they know they're going to be on the circuit very shortly, and you know, it makes it very hard on them. But Max Twigg, he'd be very, very happy there. He finished the season very strong last year. He was running a Carrera Cup car for most of the championship. Spent the money, went and got himself a Porsche Cup S, which is an international FIA GT3 car, and came out at his first meeting at Sydney and won 3 of the races.
Now we're under the safety car, it's probably a great opportunity to talk about some of the different cars in there, and you know, we see that the car of Tony Quinn, he's back in the Aston Martin. He did the first round of the championship where he started in the Mosler, which is the car that you drove last year. Is it a hard car to drive at all, the Mosler?
Look, we're just, actually you can see here, here's a replay of the start. There's going to be a bit of drama back there. James Kandouris got a cracking start from the second row.
You watch the inside line here as they all break tight.
The problem is, you could see there, David Wall slowed it up on the inside. Not his fault, but it sort of tends to, it's a concertina effect. The further back in the grid you go, the earlier you have to brake. You can't brake at the same braking point at, off the start. It just concertinas.
Watch him turn around.
And there that car just sits there steaming with water and oil pouring out of the front. But you spoke about Tony Quinn. Yeah, he campaigned the Aston Martin last year and decided to get a Mosler. You said, is the car hard to drive? I found it a reasonably easy car to drive, but I'm from a single-seater background. Someone like Tony Quinn, he does a lot of Targas, driven all sorts of things, a lot of Porsches, Carrera Cup, etc. But look,
so for these guys coming from, you know, and guys that step into this category for the first time, whether they choose to be in, you know, whether they want to be in production or challenge or championship, is it a big difference as far as aero goes? Do they have to learn that?
Yeah, definitely. If you start off on, you know, we're looking at a Porsche Carrera Cup car, it doesn't have a lot of aero. It's not a bottom car. If you go to something like the Lamborghini or the Mosler, then it becomes more like a single-seater. It's a much bigger car. It's almost based more on a GT1 car, a full-blown sports car. So it has a flat under tray. They have rear diffusers. Totally different car to drive. But I was a little bit surprised to see Porsches taking out the first 4 grid positions. This is a track for me that is very much suited to a Lamborghini, Mosler, and some of the high-end horsepower stuff like the Dodge Vodka.
Because of its fast-flowing nature.
It's a very European type track. Obviously, it's a Formula 1 circuit, and you know, that suits aerodynamic, high horsepower cars. The Porsches are really suited to you know, the smaller Adelaide type street circuits with a lot of curbs, a lot of bumps. They're a much more compliant car and probably an easier car to drive.
The Aston Martin that Tony Quinn's driving is such a beautiful car. When I had a look at that yesterday down in the paddock, it's gorgeous to look at. Why would he go from something like that to a Mosler? Like, obviously the Mosler's a great car, but what's wrong with the Aston?
He said the Aston Martin looked very much like himself. I found it a bit hard to see the similarities, but
there is none.
Look, yeah, he just thought the Aston was a little bit hard to drive. I did test one last year, and they're a fairly sketchy car in this format.
Sketchy as in nervous?
A little bit nervous in the rear. It felt like it was a car that could bite you, unlike the Porsches, you know, a little bit more compliant. It's a shame to see so many cars out so early, but huge field, you know. It's started with 40 cars. You can see them weaving around there. Max Twiggy's just trying to keep the tyres up. Max had a little bit of bad luck at the first round at Adelaide, and he's back in 18th position. So he's obviously looking for some good results in the second round here at Albert Park. Lights out on the safety car. This is almost like restarting the race for them. A rolling start to start these cars. Now go from 2 lines to single file restart.
About tyre pressures and stuff, obviously that's critical. You have a start temperature. Does this really play with it much on the restart?
Half lap into it, they'll be back. Johnny Bow looking very, very racy there in the bright yellow Ascari. It's a car that's extremely fast. Johnny's only run 2 sessions in it, 1 practice. David Wall running down the grass. He's going to lose a position out of that to Theo Konduras.
Bow looks like he's got speed there, hasn't he? But he's just getting held up.
Bow's got speed. He's been around a long, long time. He knows the circuit very, very well, and every lap he does is another lap. He ticks the box in the Ascari. He'll just be getting familiar with it. Max Twiggs pulled out a little bit of a gap on James Konduras. Peter Hackett up into 3rd place.